Grant Abraham. He's a leader of the United Party, not to be confused with the UCP, the United Conservative Party here in Alberta. And he is a candidate in the Battle River-Crowfoot by-election, wherein Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is running. Grant, thanks so much for coming on this show. I know we sort of put it together short notice, but we're just really grateful to have you on the show. I guess I'll put it to you first. Why are you running in Battle River-Crowfoot?
Well, before we get into politics, I gotta say, I love the double-breasted jacket. It's a statement of solidarity with iconic sartorial elegance, and we're in the right place. So, I mean, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm running in this by-election because I've been watching what's been going on in our country basically since 2015, but essentially since 2018. And there's things that I can't square with what's happening in relation to Canada becoming a first post nation state, or Canada being reset by COVID, or the rampant foreign interference, or Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland tripping over each other to confirm that we're going to become a New World Order, sub-state. And I just thought, why isn't the Conservative Party, I thought this a long time ago, why isn't the Conservative Party asking these questions of either Trudeau or Carney? We never hear those questions. And all the while, Canadians are asking, where has our country gone? Where is our country going? Is there even a future for this country when we don't have a budget? We don't know what our national debt is, whatever problem you want to talk about. So I thought it's high time to actually have a alternative to the establishment Conservative Party from Western Canada that is actually contending for the liberty of all Canadians. And the way I see Canada right now, I know it's a bit cliche to say this, but Canada is broken. It's on the way to becoming a failed state. And the only piece that is economically salvageable and sustainable and has the strength, will, grit, faith, tenacity to actually forge a new nation is Alberta. And in forging that new nation, potentially liberate the rest of the Canadians that are being dragged along by the chaos of the Liberal actions and the Conservative inactions.
That's a great
answer.
That's great. And it's a great place to sort of put us at a place where I want to show a clip from the forum. I think it was from your opening statement, because I have some questions about it that I just will ask when you're, after we watch it, and I'll put it to you. But we describe it as unleashing your thoughts on the current state of Canada during the Battle River-Crowfoot by-election debate. I forget how long this clip is. We'll get to the point where I think I want to ask you about, but let's just show it. And I thought this, by the way, was great. Your opening statement was great. Actually,
incredible.
I didn't have a lot of problems with many things that you said.
I'm here because I've spent a lifetime watching elections be decided in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And I've watched the West have the raw end of our structure in our Constitution. And I think that what we're really looking at here in Alberta right now is a discussion between what Canada we want to have. If it's the one that has had the West paying for the pandering to Ontario and Quebec, or whether it's one that wants to see an Alberta strong, free, and independent that can actually stand up and make a difference in this world and actually redefine Canada. And so my discussion tonight, my platform is about a strong and sovereign Alberta and its independence. And I think there's a lot of things in Canada that we're not talking about in relation to the public forum. And I believe that farmers are producers and not polluters. I believe that oil and LNG are a requirement for human prosperity. I believe that reverse racism is racism. I believe the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to humanity. I believe that compelled speech is not a Canadian value. I believe that multiculturalism has failed, and I believe that there are only two sexes. One of the challenges that we have here tonight is that there's a lot of trust, and I had my trust in the Conservative Party of Canada as well. But we are facing a threat in this nation of post-nationalism, And in this last 10 years, we've had Justin Trudeau commit to Canada being the first post-nation state. We've had a severe undermining foreign interference, and Justin Trudeau has told us that COVID would provide an opportunity for a reset. There has not been one challenge to the...
Okay, rate that out of 10. That was a 10 out of 10, Grant.
Yeah, no complaints from us.
So good.
I guess that begs the question. Are you a separatist?
I love Canada, but I'm seeing that we have a very rotten basement with parasites. And the redemption of Canada starts in Alberta. And we're going to have to deal with the imbalance and broken system that's in this country and recognize the West was set up as a colony of a colony. And it's time for radical reformative change in this country. And this is a discussion about the two values, two Canadas, the two systems that we're being confronted with in this nation. And when I look at all of the systems, whether it's the activist Supreme Court, a two-tier policing system, or the complete inability to be able to ever bring constitutional change in the existing infrastructure, I just think that it's time for a conversation about, if you want to use the word separatism, we can do that. I think that's kind of a populist word, but the actual language that I prefer to use technically is self-determination. And we need to lose the crown. We need to establish a constitutional republic in this country. We need to secure our inalienable rights within that constitution that can't be tampered with by courts that decide they want to be activists and change it. And we need to firmly align our people with those values of the new nation, and then watch the grass get green and the economic prosperity and the human flourishing happen. When we do that, the wheels are going to fall off the rest of this country, and they're going to be looking over the fence at this new nation and saying, how do we sign up? But they'll be joining under the constitutional framework that we set. That's where I'm going.
So does that, well, yeah, but does that mean an independent Alberta?
Yes.
Of Canadian Confederation?
Okay, yeah. Just other terminology for an independent or sovereign or separatist Alberta. Okay.
Separatist and independent, but I'm really just expanding upon that. Self-determination is a term that's used in international law that allows a nation to self-determine its future away from perhaps another framework of nationhood like we're in. And I use sovereignty because there's legislation out there in Canada's history that has actually in many ways liberated Alberta and the other provinces as well to determine their constitutional futures, but we've never actually activated and engaged it.
Do you know what? I will. Sorry, go ahead, Lise. Please go ahead.
Well, we've been trying this for 120 years. Us in the West. I'm from Saskatchewan, Grant. So I just like to add Saskatchewan into any time you're talking about Alberta. Saskatchewan feels the exact same way. But we've been trying to negotiate with the government of Canada for the last 120 years, and it is a shocking realization that we are little more than feudal serfs to the ruling aristocracy in Ottawa. So, what would you, as the MP for Battle River-Crowfoot, do to assert our independence or our sovereignty or our self-determination?
So my platform in this by-election is stopping equalization. It's moving Alberta to a sovereign state, and by that, to Sheila's precise question, that means separate and independent. It doesn't mean aligning as a slightly freer Alberta within the existing constitutional framework of Canada. It means leaving. I get that Saskatchewan would be in lockstep with us in Alberta. My family were homesteaders in Saskatchewan near Kindersley.
Nice.
So I have a great affinity for that province, although I've never lived there. But that would be where I'm going. And this conversation is not just a conversation for Ottawa. This is a conversation really from an international legal perspective. And I think that in some way, that's where APP is right in terms of engaging Canadians to process through this understanding of a referendum, because it's moving us to a shared knowledge. And I believe this is a very live conversation right now in Alberta. There are bigger discussions for us than just a discussion about a referendum. I think we also need to be looking back at some of our historical legislation that has severed the sovereign connection of the British government over Canada. A lot of people like to say that that's quackery. That's one quote that I've heard recently. It's an interesting thing because and I'm referring, for all of you, and you can probably ask me this in a minute, what are you referring to? I'm referring to the Westminster Act 1931. And people have identified that as being such an old piece of legislation, or a piece of legislation that our courts won't recognize or whatever. And the reality is that we've had a real challenge in this last 5 years, haven't we, in relation to having our own Charter of Rights and Freedoms and Constitution recognized in our courts. Brian Peckford tried to go to the Supreme Court to clarify an amazingly clear argument that should have been obvious for Canadians, but the court wouldn't even hear it. And so this question about Alberta sovereignty really flows back to 1931. And that's kind of probably quite a constitutional and boring conversation for us in the amount of time we have. But I will say this, that same 6 pages of paper gave the 4.5 million people in Ireland a constitutional republic in 1931. So if anyone thinks it's quackery, maybe they need to write to the people of the Republic of Ireland and ask them how a constitutional republic has felt for the last 96 years, because it was the same piece of paper and authority, legal legitimacy of that document that actually gave them their constitutional republic, because they appropriated and exercised it. So there's a broader conversation here, probably bigger than the time we have.
It is a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but you're telling us that there is an ancient piece of legislation that could actually help Alberta and Saskatchewan in this specific circumstance. That's what you're saying, Grant.
Yeah, I hope I haven't got you guys in trouble talking about that.
No, not at all, not at all. We're all writing it down. Westminster Act, 1931. So can we talk about some of the other things that you said, Grant?
Wait. Before we move on, I just want to have us all respond. I haven't watched this yet, so I'm coming in cold too. Pierre Poilievre responding to somebody asking him, why shouldn't the West separate? And that has really been a question that Corey Morgan of the Western Standard, who also wrote the Sovereigntist Handbook, he asks people, under the current conditions, if a 2025 Albertan living in free, Rupert's Land, would they join Canadian Confederation today under the existing agreement? And when you put it to people like that, you're hard pressed to find somebody who says yes. And so I think this lady asks Poilievre a similar question, and he gives a very federalist answer from what I understand, but let's all watch together.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone like me who was a young family and seeing more hope in the idea of a landlocked Western Canada than a never-ending Liberal government? The Liberal government owns the media, they run the universities, they have no shame or integrity. It feels like the game is rigged and that the East will always decide our fate. Why should Alberta and Saskatchewan stay?
That's a fair question, a very fair question. I frankly understand the frustration that people feel. The Liberals in Ottawa have told the West to pay up and shut up. They've attacked Alberta and Saskatchewan's biggest industries of agriculture, oil and gas, to name a few. And they have transferred massive wealth out of this region. So all of those concerns are legitimate. The question is, how do we deal with it? I believe the answer is in building alliances with like-minded Canadians across the country. So for example, Alberta and Saskatchewan should lock arms with Newfoundland, which wants to repeal C-69 so that it can double its oil production. Newfoundland got off equalization by producing offshore oil. Now they want to do gas. We should lock arms with them to do that. You have the First Nations communities along with the British Columbia coast that want to build at least a half dozen LNG liquefaction plants to take Alberta's gas, liquefy it, put it on a ship, send it off to 2.5 billion customers in Asia, and get $14 for a million metric British thermal units instead of $3. That would bring home tens of billions of dollars wealth for our people across the oil and gas regions of this country. We should team up with the people in the Greater Toronto area who want to see a massive crackdown on crime by toughening up the criminal justice system, because they're seeing the chaos in their streets. We should build alliances with, and you might be surprised to hear me say this, Quebec wants to have a smaller, weaker federal government so that they can have more autonomy over their provincial decisions. We should team up with them and say every province, including Alberta and Saskatchewan, should have more autonomy by having less power concentrated in Ottawa. Now, you might say that sounds great, but when is it ever going to happen? Well, it did happen. I described the nightmare that that happened under the Pierre Elliott Trudeau period. But a few years later, we got a conservative government that brought in free trade with the United States, which was a massive boon for the prairies, by the way. It got rid of the National Energy Program, just privatized or got rid of about 25 different federal government agencies and bodies, reduced the size of the federal government in relative terms by roughly half. And in the period following 1984 to 2015, Alberta became pretty much the richest place anywhere in the world. And so it was by building alliances with other regions of the country that we were able to get what we wanted. And that was a great period. Like, look, in the period from the mid-'80s until 2015, when Harper left office, we built the oil sands. Incredible. The oil sands boom happened in that entire time. I think it was really liftoff in the 90s. So that's the incredible past we have. We have an incredible history with Canada, fighting and winning wars, building prosperity, settling the West. And I think we should build on that history by building alliances with other parts of the country that want the same things we do. Thank you.
The one thing he didn't address in there is that all of these alliances that we can build with like-minded people across this country are easily overrun by an activist court. And I'll point to you a great example of this, very close to home for me, literally just up the road, and that's the Northern Gateway Pipeline. It was approved after meeting all, I think it was 209 conditions set forward by the apolitical National Energy Board. And that was in 2014 under Harper, completely approved. Activists took it to court. The Federal Court of Appeal overturned the approval, and then the project was abandoned in 2016 because they just couldn't see a way through the court system, even though it met all the technical requirements, 209 of them, to get the project done. So we can have all of the buy-in all along the way when you have outside activists overturning the will of the people, really, to get these projects done. So it seems that all seems very nice, this solidarity with our fellow Canadians, but it also seems pretty naive and a little bit ignorant of history. Grant, go ahead.
So, when I listen to that, you have him talking about alliances with other provinces, but he actually, if you listen closely, he's talking about alliances and Newfoundland getting off equalization. This country runs on equalization payments. It's not about other provinces getting off equalization. It's about Alberta stopping subsidizing Central Canada $20 billion a year. So that's great that they're getting off. We don't want to be subsidizing economies, other provinces that lack the motivation or agenda to actually develop their own resources. And that's one of the big challenges in Quebec, because they won't actually liberate their own resources. So we subsidize Central Canada. So, those kinds of alliances are great for other provinces to get off equalization because we're the ones paying equalization. So CPC did all these great things over the years, but they also brought in Agenda 2030. And Agenda 2030 is that kind of corrosive ideological impulse that's actually undermining our municipal, provincial, federal laws. The most interesting one that policy shaping that I've seen of that is a county in Ontario where they're trying to figure out the square footage of barns in the agricultural community so that they can calculate that by the annual rainfall and then tax the water displacement that runs off That's an agenda 2030. That's making farmers poorer. That's making our food prices go up. That's creating a centralized codependence on the government. Do we want that? That's a conservative implemented agenda. And that isn't conserving anything. It's not conserving our self-sufficiency. It's not conserving agricultural communities. It's sure not conserving the bottom line in terms of the operation of farms. So let's talk about that. Or let's talk about oil production. I mean, the Conservatives love to talk about unleashing our oil sector, but they won't leave the UN Paris Climate Accord. How does that work? So these kinds of little paradoxes, people actually need time to think through them. When they hear these inconsistencies, then they start to go, you're right. That lady's question in the clip that you played there is an amazing question, because, you know, really, why would we stay? We're paying for the dysfunction, and the ideological shadow that we're getting over Western Canada is actually destroying our culture, values, and traditions. And we're seeing terrible things happening in terms of the nuclear family. We're seeing things happen in terms of the normalization of pedophilia, the sexualization of our children. We can talk about this economically, but you can have a lot of money and still live in hell, and that's not the Canada that we want.
You're touching on one of the things that we've done a lot of talking about, and it's the adoption of fiscal conservatism, but not social conservatism. And one of the things that you said in your speech that was so interesting to me was that you believe that there are two sexes. Now, if we just look back to Dr. Leslyn Lewis is a conservative MP, and she said last week, we must protect the sex-based rights and safety of women and girls, and we can do so while respecting the dignity of every individual, including those that express a different gender identity. What do you have to say to statements like that, Grant, where we have so-called conservatives saying that they believe in biological reality for women and girls, but we also must protect the dignity of people that express a different gender identity? What do you have to say to that?
I think that gender ideology is a psychological phenomena. Sexes are molecular structures, XX, XY, and there might be the most minuscule deviations or derivations of those, but I think we have to distinguish in our language between what sex means and what gender means. And for me, gender is an ideological disposition of interpreting sex, but it doesn't change your sex.
Right. Thanks for clearing that up, Grant. Really good.
You know, I would stop with like, if I were to explain Leslyn Lewis's statement, and I'm not inside her head, so I'm only speculating, but like for someone like me who looks at everything through the Christian worldview, I believe that everybody has dignity, inherent dignity, because they're created in the image of the divine. And so we should respect the dignity of every individual. But I also express great compassion for people who are struggling with their gender identity, as opposed to taking a proactive role in affirming it.
Mm.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that analysis, Sheila. I mean, that's not to say that the human rights should be diminished, that there shouldn't be compassion or care or concern or the equal treatment under the law. I just think that trying to re-rationalize something that has been established for human eternity is a challenge. So if you want, I can see it and understand it and explain it if it's set in the context of a psychological interpretation of sex.
Okay, we're running out of time with Grant because we still have another whole half of the show to do. But the one thing that I really wanted to have you on the show because of is this statement. And I said you were using liberal talking points, but I want you to explain to me what you meant there. And it was, and I'll tell you, I sat through every single minute of the Foreign Interference Commission with Justice Hogue. So I feel like maybe I'm too far in the weeds on this. So I'll allow you to explain what you meant here, but you ripped into the 11 traitorous. We've got MPs in the social clip, but it's not MPs, it's parliamentarians, because, you know, like there's Victor O in the mix there. Yeah. He's a senator. You ripped into the 11 parliamentarians who conspired or wittingly or unwittingly, and Mary Ng is one of them, and I don't know if she does too much wittingly, if you know what I mean, with the foreign governments. And you call out Poilievre for not obtaining his security clearance so he can name them. So let's watch this, and then I want to have you explain what you meant by that.
We need to look at farmers in China and the tariffs that we're paying for canola and get those stripped down. We have a leader of a political party here to my left who will not attain his clearance, security clearance. Hey, that's the truth. He won't attain his security clearance to actually tell you who the 11 MPs were that you were put in front of to vote.
You're going to get crucified there, buddy.
So would I get some more time for that, or is...
Yeah, so I'm going to say that you can have 15 more seconds.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, because we had 11 MPs in this federal election that were the direct agents of or under the influence of foreign interference, and you weren't told. And why can't we actually deal with foreign governments that are influencing us? Because our loyal opposition won't tell us. Thank you very much, Mr. Poilievre.
Like an anvil in that room. So I thought maybe I'm getting something wrong here. So I went back and read the Security of Information Act, and Poilievre, if he is told something in secret, and we also know that the government abuses what's secret. So if Poilievre gets his security clearance and he is giving a briefing on stuff that is deemed to be secret, that's stamped secret, he cannot talk about it unless it is already before the House of Commons, or he is breaking the Security of Information Act. And so I understand that. And I also know that there are, people in the Conservative Party who have received this high-level security clearance. The Conservatives have told on themselves when they thought things were happening. Like Victor O, we know that he was a problem because the Conservatives told on him. And so I just don't know how we could know about those 11 parliamentarians if Poilievre subjected himself to this security clearance, which, as we know, he had before. So he's pretty aware of what he can talk about and what he can't talk about, because he used to be a Harper cabinet minister. But tell me where I'm getting this wrong, please.
Okay. Thanks for actually asking this question, because I definitely think the country needs to revisit this. It for sure is a Liberal talking point, because I've come to the conclusion that the Liberals are simply betraying the country. They're undermining this nation. So why would they tell us if there's foreign interference that they're aligned with for the undermining of the nation? So, sometimes people say to me, well, why aren't the Liberals telling us? Well, that's why. So then the next question is, well, why wouldn't the loyal opposition find out and tell us and get the necessary security clearance to do that? And if I've listened to Mr. Poilievre's answers, his answers are because, well, first of all, if I do, I face a prison sentence of 14 years. And I think that we've got to be careful here when we define the legislation that, at least that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Foreign Interference in Security of Information Act 1985. If you read Section 15 of that, it's very, very clear in Section 15. It says that if information is reasonably believed to be in the public interest, then that provides a full defense for the release of that information. So in my assertion, if we are voting for spies in this nation, or we have a framework that is supposed to be the guard dogs that's protecting our nation in the form of the loyal opposition, why would they not at least attain the information and then assess whether it's in the public interest to disclose it? And if it is in the public interest to disclose it, actually take the patriot valor to protect the country and tell us who we're voting for that's actually foreign spies. And that question where you played the clip of started with actually a discussion about why we have tariffs and why we can't confront the Chinese with the 100% tariff on canola. And so, that was me spinning canola into a discussion about this issue, because I think it's so important. It's not a Liberal talking point. It's a national talking point. And Mr. Poilievre needs to answer to the country, why isn't Section 15 an option? And are you telling the nation that this information is not material or significant, or that it is not surreptitious or undermining to the nation? And And if it isn't, then why don't you say that? And if it is, do you really think that the whole nation of Canadians are going to allow you to rot in jail for 14 years because you told us the truth to save our country, our sovereignty, and our borders? I don't think so. And I think it would actually may be the wire that would allow Canadians to wake up and see that the country's being betrayed. So I think that's the question that Mr. Poilievre asked, and I think that we have been sold a bill of goods with this little flimsy discussion about Mr. Poilievre being under an NDA, some kind of NDA where his little hands are tied and he just can't tell us.
You know, that's an interesting point, because we have an example of a politician in this country who said, "Come and get me."
We sure do. We sure do.
The law. Lise, explain.
We sure do, Grant Abraham. It must have been about a year ago, between a year and two ago, that the federal government said to the government of Saskatchewan, look, you are going to pay that carbon tax, or else we could come and get you and take you to jail. And you know what Premier Scott Moe did? You know what he did? He said, okay, try. Okay,
yeah,
try.
Bring the big handcuffs.
Bring the big handcuffs, basically is what Scott Moe said. Saskatchewan stopped paying carbon taxes despite the threats of imprisonment, because that's exactly what the federal government did. They were like, there is a law here that says that if you don't pay the taxes we tell you to pay, then we can cart you off to jail. They called their bluff. Nobody came and arrested Scott Moe, as far as I can tell. And you have a really great point, Grant. I think that you just deepened this conversation for Canadians, and you just put a bug in the ears of Conservatives across the West.
And I also think about just ordinary people doing extraordinary things. For example, Tamara Lich being willing and has served time in the interest of her fellow Canadians in the pursuit of freedom, because it was the right thing to do. It makes you wonder. It does. You have deepened the conversation. I'm glad we had you on to explain this. It's very difficult to explain this before that person starts ringing that little dinner bell at you in the forum.
That's right. I had 1 minute to comment on it, and I think we need to be clear that mandate of Foreign Interference and Security of Information Act applies to Mr. Poilievre already by having been an MP. It also has the implication of being responsible for omissions to act in relation to that legislation. And I think maybe he should get some further legal advice in terms of his status with regard to secrets that actually are undermining the nation. Because if we take the view that post-nationalism is a betrayal of Canadian people and their sovereignty and our values, and there are foreign actors that are working in conjunction with the Liberal government in that betrayal, then Mr. Poilievre, I believe, has a duty to actually stand up and protect Canadians, because we sent our soldiers all over the world to fight for liberty. My family fought and died to protect the same liberty that's being undermined in this nation now. So why wouldn't we have the valor or the courage to actually confront that discussion? It's not just a superficial little watertight story. And Tom Mulcair indicating or telling everyone that an NDP minister wouldn't have got it is hardly a compelling argument for why it shouldn't be disclosed. Thank you very much. Like, oh my goodness.
We could keep Grant all day, but we have a whole other half of the show to do. Grant, tell us how people can find out more about your platform in Battle River-Crowfoot, because what are we? 2 weeks out? About
2 weeks out. Yeah. Okay. So you can find us at the unitedpartyofcanada.ca. Be very careful not to punch in unitedpartyofcanada.com. There was another iteration, I never knew about it, of the unitedpartyofcanada.com, which is some kind of left-leaning environmentalist party 15 years ago.
Horrible.
So make sure you put in .ca. .com is not us. And if you want the specific details of this campaign for Battle River-Crowfoot, you can go to voteforgrant.ca.